Dear friends, thank you for supporting this channel on Patreon to join our growing family of donors, now 59 patrons strong. And remember, once we reach 100 active patrons, we will start sending out a 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle, autographed by your host, Dunagun Kaiser, to one active supporter each and every month. Thanks for taking a minute to pitch in by going to patreon.com/ReluctantPreppers and pledging your support today. Thanks very much.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a first-time visitor today. Bob Lindsey is a candidate right now for LA County Sheriff in Los Angeles, California. He's joining us on Reluctant Preppers to talk about his mission, his purpose, why he's running for sheriff right now. And as you know on Reluctant Preppers, we've been knowing that sheriffs across the country are in the corner of the people and for their constitutional law enforcement. Bob, thank you for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
You bet, Dunagun. Thank you for having me.
If you could kick us off by just giving us a quick rundown of who you are, and then we'll talk more about why you're doing what you're doing, why you're going after this role of LA County Sheriff. But first of all, just give people an understanding of your background and why you're well suited for such a responsible role.
Well, thank you. Yes. In 1978, I came onto the Sheriff's Department as a deputy sheriff. And then over the course of the next 32 years with the Sheriff's Department, I worked 25 different assignments. The assignments ranged from 5 patrol stations to 5 custody facilities, surveillance, gang operations, the academy, advanced officer training, multiple positions. And then at one point in time, I actually ran the inside of the department as the director of personnel, which was responsible for all recruitment, all hiring, and backgrounds, and running payroll, all of the HR. So I know the department inside and out. And then I didn't actually retire from the Sheriff's Department. I got recruited to the state court. So they asked me to come over there as a director of security for all 40 Los Angeles County Superior Courts, which I've been doing for the last 7 years.
So you've got an entire multi-decade career in law enforcement with many different aspects and a lot of responsibility, but something's got you fired up right now. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of charisma and a lot of strength and stamina to go after such a role as LA County Sheriff. What is your driving mission? What is the passion that drives you to go after that at this time?
You know, Dunagun, I was getting ready to retire with my wife, and we were moving out of California. Actually, we were headed to Arizona. And I took a look back over my left shoulder at a department that I loved, 32 years there, and saw what was happening to the inside of the department, the crisis that was occurring inside of it, and then also the crisis that's happening in the community. I think anybody who lives in California, or for that matter, across the United States, understands that California right now has, it's dissolving. It's dissolving from this standpoint. The homeless situation is out of control. The mental health situation is out of control. Crime here in Los Angeles County, the FBI just put out some crime statistics. Homicides year to date, 2017 versus 2018. Homicides here in Los Angeles County are up 56%. Violent crime here in Los Angeles County over the last 4 years, up 69%. And you know what? That has a lot to do with who's running the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And so after I took that look back, I said, 32 years, it's not going to go to waste. I'm coming back in, and we're going to do something to try and repair this.
That's remarkable. I have a couple of connections there. Having come from Arizona myself, have a real fondness for that area. But I also have a son who is involved in. He's a security specialist in residential security in the LA area. So I get to hear. I get to hear him looking at these crime maps and working with people in neighborhoods that are especially hard hit. And my goodness, it's been a lot of changes, and not for the better. And glad that you're concerned, and glad that you're wanting to take an active role, because there's one thing to wring your hands and complain about, society's going to pot, or look at the world is getting to be a more dangerous place or whatever, but to actually say, and I can do something about it, we can do something about it together, is a big step. Are there specific goals that you have to say, how you specific plans of saying, if we just do these few starting things, it's really going to make a difference for the people of LA County?
Sure, you bet. I mean, one of the things that's happened inside the Sheriff's Department is the morale on the Sheriff's Department from the Los Angeles County Deputy Sheriffs is extremely low. In fact, they just did a vote of confidence or no confidence on the current sheriff, and 90% of those that returned the ballots from the deputy sheriffs stated they want this guy gone that's in there right now, and they want me to be the sheriff. So this is huge, because this is the largest sheriff's department in the entire world. We've got 18,000 employees. 10,000 of those are deputy sheriffs, so it's a huge department. We cover 4,100 square miles of territory with 10.5 million people. So this is a huge undertaking, and I can tell you, when I got involved in this, I didn't realize how big 4,100 square miles was, but I know now. And so, there's a lot of things that we have to do on the Sheriff's Department that impact the entire community. And one of the things that most people don't understand, and for those that are listening to this from Los Angeles County and even outside, anybody that lives in Los Angeles County can vote. It doesn't matter what city you're in. It doesn't matter whether you have a private police agency policing you. If you live in Los Angeles County, you can vote for sheriff. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't even know it's an elected position. So they never get that far down the ballot. But you need to look at the whole ballot. And the sheriff controls one thing that is vital to every city in Los Angeles County. He controls the jails. And so when the jails aren't operated correctly, it impacts every city. And in Los Angeles County, Dunagun, we have what's known as flash incarceration right now. And so what's happening is if somebody gets sentenced in court to a year, they only do 10 days in jail here in Los Angeles County. If you're sentenced to 6 months, you may only do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So criminals all over the state, all over the surrounding counties, come into LA County now to commit their crimes because they know that there is absolutely no penalty for committing it. And so this is causing a revolving door system here in Los Angeles County. And so when we talk about the morale being down, when we talk about the revolving system of what's happening with criminals here, it's just ripe for a catastrophe to happen right here in LA County.
Help us understand a little bit, because that makes no sense to the average person. How is it that people have heard, okay, someone gets 20 years to life and they get out on parole in 2 years or something like that, but usually the ratio is maybe 5 to 1 or 10 to 1 or something, but you're talking about something that's radically out of balance. What's going on with that?
Well, it is out of balance. Here they had propositions that actually are releasing criminals from state prison and moving them down to the county system. Now, in the county system, that then takes away bed space for those that we're arresting here in Los Angeles County. The other issue is the mental health situation that we have here. The current sheriff is housing people actually in our jails, some 350 to 400 mental health patients that absolutely don't have any reason to be in the jail. Our deputies aren't trained to be nurses, psychiatrists, and those things. They're law enforcement officers. So we have a whole mental health population that isn't receiving the right treatment, or they're not in the right position in there to receive the right medication and analysis that they need. So there's a lot of problems within the jail system that cause this. But most of all, we've got closed jails here that aren't being operated. And I don't want to get too complicated, but this sheriff forgot to hire deputy sheriffs. He had the budget, he had the money, he had it given to him, but he failed to hire enough deputies to open these jails and to even cover street patrol, courts, the metro trains. We have community colleges. We have so many operations within this department that when you don't have enough deputies, everything starts to fall apart. And that's what's happening here in LA County.
A couple of key areas of importance to our viewers. Historically, when we've talked to sheriffs in the past, we've talked, for example, to Sheriff Mark Vasilishin from Wood County in Ohio, and he stressed the the origin of the sheriff as being rooted in the U.S. Constitution, as actually the only law enforcement officer that's provided for in the U.S. Constitution, and stressed the elected nature of the role, which you touched on, as well as how the sheriff works directly for the people and is not beholden to the mayors or the governor or the president or that sort of thing. Could you talk just a little bit about that, the constitutionality of the sheriff's office and the purpose that you see in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question, because the current sheriff that we have here on a daily basis is violating the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, in my opinion. And let me describe why. Let's start with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, when we talk about concealed weapons permits here in Los Angeles County, I already mentioned there's 10.5 million people. He has only issued 190 CCW permits, so concealed weapons permits. That's 0.000006% of the population.
Over what period of time?
That's his entire tenure. Oh, there's only 190 people in the entire county of 10.5 million that he believes deserve a CCW. This is an infringement on the Constitution, on the Second Amendment, and that's one of my platforms here. And, in California, it can be unpopular for some when I come out and boldly state, wait a minute, I believe in the Second Amendment, and here's what I believe. I believe that every person in Los Angeles County, given the fact they go through a background check, given the opportunity to then go through a training class and they shoot straight and qualify,
right,
then they should be issued a CCW. And good cause for me is if they apply and say, I need it for self-defense. Now, for the current sheriff, good cause for him is not self-defense. Good cause is you have to show pretty much that you're going to be murdered today, and it's inevitable. Because I am receiving letters from people all over California who have been assaulted, people who have restraining orders, people who have testified in criminal cases and threats against them, and he's still not issuing it to them. And so this is a huge problem here in Los Angeles County. So that's about to change on June 5th.
It's interesting because in answering my first question about constitutionality, you went right to my second question, and that was about CCW, because that's another thing that's near and dear to the hearts of people who are preparedness-minded. There's a quote, in fact, that we've heard several times issued, which is, free men have guns, slaves do not. And the idea also just that the people should not fear the government, but the government's there to serve the people. And that part of being an armed populace is being able to have a distributed sense of order. The other sheriff that we had interviewed, who talked about his primary objective as being the person who keeps the peace in the county, right, is assisted not only by his deputies but by an armed and informed and self-interested populace that is trying to also make sure that no wrong is done in their communities, in their homes, in their vehicles, wherever that they may be. It distributes among the citizenry the ability to mutually enforce right or wrong. Others that stand in opposition to that, you're asking to be put into the role of the person who's the keeper of the peace there in LA County, and people who are concerned that the more armed your populace would become, the more volatile situation it might be. But others say no, it's a well-armed populace that actually is able to help the law enforcement keep the peace. So evidently you've had time to reflect on that and to study that. What are your findings, or what statistics are you aware of the actual impact of having an armed populace?
Well, everything you're saying is absolutely true. And the FBI, I think, just came out with a statistical number regarding the shootings that we've been having in the schools. And they put out that 10 school shootings, and we never hear about this in the press, of course, but 10 school shootings where dozens of kids could have been killed were stopped by somebody in that school that happened to be there at that particular time that was armed. And so that is a fact. And this is an FBI fact that they just recently put out. But you can move beyond that. When you start looking at statistics, whether it's from Cal Guns or the CRPA, which, by the way, have endorsed me, California Rifle Pistol Association, they are friends of mine. in the fight for the Second Amendment. And what you have is you have the female population here across the United States. Just look at the number of rapes that are stopped, the physical assaults that are stopped. When a woman is carrying a gun, she doesn't even have to shoot it. When the assailant sees the gun, they run. If they don't see the gun, then guess what? They believe they can overpower the female, and they go ahead and they do what it was that they planned to do. So there are so many instances and statistics throughout, not just California, but throughout the country. And the other thing about CCWs is this. The studies show that people who carry CCWs, the responsible people, because we know here in California, irresponsible criminals really don't follow the law.
Right.
I worked out on the streets for a long time and arrested people with guns, but I never arrested a person with a gun who actually owned it. It was either stolen, or the serial numbers were removed, or it was an unreported stolen, and the owner didn't even actually realize it was gone yet.
Okay.
But bad guys get guns. Bad girls get guns. Responsible people out in the community can prevent crime. And here's another statistic. Across the nation, if there's an active shooter, it takes an average of 10 minutes for police response. And that is for them to get there, for them to coordinate their entry, for them to do whatever it is they're going to do. Can you imagine a trained individual going into a school that is a bad person, a terrorist, how much damage they can do in 10 minutes? I mean, that is a scary thought. The response isn't what stops people in time. It's the people that are there already in place to protect those who can't protect themselves.
Yeah, it's a strange thing when you walk into any either school, movie theater, other place of business that has a no weapons sign on the door, and you think, some people, I think the intention, at least on some people's part, for initiating that or thinking that that's a good idea is, well, if we put a sign up that says there's no guns inside, that'll make it a safer place. But it certainly seems the opposite intuitive to someone who thinks, wait a minute, if you're dealing with someone who is desperate or who's got a predator mindset or whatever, it's exactly saying this is a safe place to do criminal things because nobody's going to be able to resist you. There's no healthy resistance. It's like having a cell with no immune system. Go ahead, attack here, because that's a very concerning for many people.
I think, Dunagun, it's a misdirected good intention. But it doesn't work because you're right. I believe here in California, the most unsafe places, the places where you are the biggest target, is in a gun-free zone, because that is an invitation for those to come in and believe that they're not going to have any resistance whatsoever. And trust me, they understand that it takes time to respond. And so I think you saw that in one of our recent school shootings where they did the shooting, they took 2 or 3 minutes, and then they walked out with the students because they know response is going to be delayed longer than that. And it's a good way for them to get away. So they time it, they do it, they get away. They'll eventually be caught. But the point is this. People all understand that the only way to stop this is if you have somebody already there. Now, those that are not advocates for guns, obviously, they fight it. But my job as the sheriff of Los Angeles County is to protect everybody, and that includes the children in the schools. And they need somebody there to protect them. You know, teachers without a gun can't throw backpacks and pencils at people who are coming in with bullets. Right. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, the analogy seems valid. If you look at the wisdom of nature to put an immune system distributed throughout your entire body, it's not just in one place. It's everywhere, so that whenever germs get in, they're met with a response. And ironically, we all recognize that someone who has no immunity, someone who has no immune system, in fact, that's what acquired immunity or other diseases can leave you very vulnerable. So it's when you don't have that distributed ability to resist intrusion that you're at your greatest vulnerability, and that there's no reason to see that doesn't scale up to larger areas as well, larger organisms, society as well. Can we talk now a little bit about the relationship of law enforcement to the community? We've certainly seen just here's one little anecdote. When we first published our interview with the Ohio sheriff 4.5 years ago, we got 150 thumbs up and 0 thumbs down was the initial responses to that video, and we republished it as an encore about a year ago and got a mixed response. We got like 6-to-1 ratio of thumbs up to thumbs down. It's still popular, but there had been a noticeable shift, and over the last half decade, we've seen so many high-profile news stories, whether it's riots in Ferguson or marches down in Florida or whatever, where there's talk, the message that seems to keep getting, the narrative that keeps getting hammered in the media is whether it's police brutality, police abuse of power, racism, division where there's sides being taken, and now there seems to be a shift of public sentiment. We'd be interested in knowing how much of your thoughts are that this has been actually fomented, this perception of division between a people and their law enforcement rather than a partnership. So that's question number one. Is this an organic development, or is this a intentional by design to cause tension between people and their law enforcement? And secondly, what specific actions would you plan to do as LA Sheriff to build those bridges of trust and to try to heal and repair some of those relationship that's gone awry? So if we could first talk about the intentionality and the media treatment of this, if you could first speak to that.
Well, sure. Dunagun, perception is reality. I know you know that. And here in Los Angeles County, we have, for the last 3 years, had a sheriff who sat in his office rather than being in the community. So here in Los Angeles County, there is a separation of what I would call between the community and the sheriff's department. It has nothing to do with the deputies who are out there doing their best to try and be in the community, but it has to do with leadership and meeting with the right civic groups, meeting with the people who can make decisions, getting out and talking to the church family, getting out and talking to business leaders. Because, and I'll give you an example. We had a shooting in Westmont here in the LA County area, and immediately the community wanted answers. And rather than the sheriff stepping up, going out and beginning to sit down and work through that issue, he sent surrogates. He sent a chief and a captain. He sent people that he knew would likely get beat up because he didn't want to be in the forefront of what was controversy. Mm-hmm. Well, this shouldn't be controversial. If he had been in the community and been speaking to groups like Ceasefire, like United in Peace, and there's many other organizations in the communities that are leaders. And when you talk to those leaders first, before the shooting occurs, then when the shooting occurs, they come out onto the streets with you, and they give you the opportunity to do a fair investigation without believing that you're hiding something or there's a lack of transparency. I mean, in our sheriff's department today, there's a huge lack of transparency. And I can tell you, even the LA Times has sued the sheriff's department for a lack of transparency, for not delivering public information requests that the Times has asked for. Now, if you're not going to deliver information to the Times, then lo and behold, you're probably not delivering information to the people on the streets. And this is the problem. So what you're asking is that community liaison, our being able to, as a sheriff's department, as an entity, as the sheriff, to be out in that community is a huge aspect of basically eliminating hate, eliminating riots, eliminating false perceptions. And that's what I'm moving to do. I'm moving to go ahead and build that liaison, build that relationship, so that if we have a bad cop, we want them out. We want them fired. We want them terminated. You know, if they murder somebody or it's a shooting that they could have prevented, do what we need to do through the criminal system. But what we don't want to do is take somebody before they've gone through the trial, before they've done that, and convict them. And that goes for anybody in the community or anybody in law enforcement. And I think people understand what's fair. People are just right now confused. And I will answer this about the media. I think the media sparks hate. I think the media is intending to do that. Because when I walk out into the community, I will tell you, the most people out there love their police officers, love what they're doing, want to be protected, want them to show up when they call. And it's a minority of people that actually say, I hate cops. And so when it's stressed in the media constantly that there's all this conflict, well, I think they're trying to create conflict. But you know what? We as the Sheriff's Department, if we don't move around that, if we're not bigger than that, and if we don't get out there, then that's our problem, and we deserve what we get.
We have been talking with Bob Lindsey. He's a candidate currently for LA County Sheriff in California. Bob, for people who are with whom your message is resonating and live in LA County, what specifically do you need them to do to support you in the next upcoming days here?
Well, we have about 6 days. So we just need you to use your social media platforms to have people drive them to my website, bob4sheriff.com. That's bob4sheriff.com. You know, if you believe in what I believe, please go out and vote, because here in Los Angeles County, there's 10.5 million people, but only 5 million registered voters. So half of the people here in Los Angeles County will never make it to the polls because it's not legal to go there. But the other 5 million, only maybe 5, 10, 15% vote. So your single vote means a lot, and it means a lot to me because we've got to turn California around. I mean, we're in a situation where state government here in California wants to pretty much ban guns. They want to get rid of them altogether. I mean, there's a legislation up there now that they want to ban the sale of the Bible. I mean, so there's crazy things happening here in California. We have to put people in place that are going to stand up. And the only way that's going to happen is if I have people stand up with me. Standing up alone, I can't win. But if you stand up for what we all believe, then we can go ahead and take back this state, and we can start by taking back LA County.
Well, Bob, you certainly have our best wishes for your election in the upcoming days here. And regardless of the outcome of that election, we would be more than proud to have you back as a guest because your depth of knowledge about law enforcement and about the issues that are facing our communities, it would be of great interest continuing. And we've scratched the surface of only a few topics here on Reluctant Preppers, but thank you for joining us so much.
Dunagun, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks to all those that watch you. Continue watching.